Well, UK Foreign Secretary James Cleverly says that when it comes to a brutal attack like the one witnessed in Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that support for victims and the UN Charter must be enduring. He was speaking with SABC News in New York on the sidelines of the Ministerial meeting of the Security Council, marking the one-year anniversary of the invasion.
Foreign Secretary James Cleverly, welcome back to SABC News.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You say that 1 year into this war that your support for Ukraine is not and will never be time limited. Quote, for as long as it takes until Ukraine prevails. The UK, sir, has committed almost $8 billion to Ukraine since this war began. Is this a war that can be won militarily, given the emphasis we are now seeing from Western nations in terms of rearming Ukraine?
Well, the point that I was making is that there are things at stake which are at the foundation of the post-war peace settlement. The UN Charter, territorial integrity, national sovereignty. And it is so incredibly important that we defend all those things. And what we mustn't do, what we mustn't send as a signal to the world, is that our passion to defend those things is somehow time limited, that we are firm on these principles, but only for a while. We have to make it clear that when it comes to a brutal attack, like we have seen from Russia into Ukraine, that our support is enduring, and our support for the principles that underpin the United Nations are also enduring.
32 countries abstained on Thursday's General Assembly resolution, underscoring the need for a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, including South Africa, China and India. South Africa's ambassador said the resolution came amidst an influx of arms to the region, perpetuating greater acts of violence, increased human suffering, which she argued made the call for peace in that resolution less attainable. South Africa is suggesting, sir, that arming Ukraine is problematic. How do you respond?
Well, let's just remind ourselves of the sequence of events here. Russia has militarily intervened in a number of its neighbors, in Georgia, in Moldova, in Ukraine, in Crimea, and now the full-scale invasion that we are marking 12 months of at the moment. So Russia has demonstrated a history of aggression. And what Ukraine is doing is defending itself. The rocket attacks are hitting Ukraine. The rapes are happening to Ukrainian women and children. The infrastructure is being damaged in Ukraine. And being neutral, it does not mean turning a blind eye to such egregious violations of the UN Charter. And that's why we're saying we have to give Ukraine the tools it needs to defend itself.
French President Emmanuel Macron, speaking at the Munich Security Conference, which UN President Rishi Sunak also attended, talked about the need to rebalance the global order because he was struck by how the West had lost the trust of the global South. He talked about the need to fight this narrative of double standards. How do you respond, sir, to criticism of hypocrisy from countries in the global South on the application of international law, particularly given examples in Iraq and Libya?
Well, we have got to make sure that we make our case, and we make our case clearly in a compelling and open way to the global South.
Does that include saying we've made mistakes in the past?
Well, what it does is it means not allowing only one side of an argument to be put forward. I think one of the mistakes that we have made is to allow many of our friends to have poison dripped in their ears from Moscow, only listening to one side of an argument. And of course, if you only see one side of an argument, your viewpoint will be distorted by that. So we need to have the humility to say that we should perhaps have engaged more consistently with some of our long-standing friends around the world, South Africa and others, explaining our position so that that's well understood. But I think on this instance, the argument is so compelling that there is one aggressor and one defender, and in this, we will remain resolutely on the side of the country that is being brutalized.
What's your reaction to the 12-point plan put forward by China?
Well, of course, we look at proposals put forward by a country of significance of China. There are some very important elements to it. The support for the UN Charter, the opposition to the threat or the use of nuclear weapons. So, of course, we'll take that seriously. But ultimately, what is our position is that the preservation of the UN Charter, the protection of the principle that big, powerful countries cannot just brutalize less powerful countries. That's what's at stake, and that's what we're defending.
Final question. President Zelensky has said that restoring Ukraine's territorial integrity is not up to any future peace negotiation. Withdrawal, he says, of Russian troops and the cessation of hostilities is key. The restoration of Ukraine's state borders with Russia are key pegs of his plan. You say President Putin's heart is set on imperial expansion. So it begs the question, what does our march towards peace look like in the months ahead?
Well, Vladimir Putin has got to understand that we listen to him when he says that he wants to recreate the USSR, when he wants to expand Russia by force to borders and re-establish that sphere of control. We should listen to the words that he says. We should oppose that action. We should make it clear that the days of redrawing national borders by force must be in the past, and we must maintain those principles. That underpins the decisions that we make. That underpins the conversations that we have internationally. And I think the preservation, the protection of the UN Charter must remain at the heart of the UK's foreign policy.
James Cleverly, UK Secretary of State for Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Affairs, as always. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.